While the nation has been waiting for one major Supreme Court case concerning abortion rights, it was another that set off a huge reaction today in Washington, D.C., extending to our state capital in Albany and right here in Western New York. That ruling striking down a law here in New York State is the most significant on a gun case in more than a decade. And it has huge implications for this state and the country when it comes to the Second Amendment and what restrictions are allowed on the right to bear arms. The ruling was 6-3, striking down the requirement here in New York that you need to demonstrate a special need in order to get a concealed carry permit. Justice Thomas, writing for the majority, saying that that violates the Second Amendment. Strong reaction to this on both sides today. The state Republican Party chairman said of the ruling, quote, "Bravo." He said the opinion is for the people over the politicians. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden said earlier today that the ruling contradicts common sense and the Constitution. And the governor here in New York reacted this way.
I'm sorry this dark day has come. That we're supposed to go back to what was in place since 1788 when the Constitution of the United States of America was ratified. And I would like to point out to the Supreme Court justices that the only weapons at the time were muskets. I'm prepared to go back to muskets. I don't think they envision the high-capacity assault weapon magazines intended for battlefields as being covered from this, but I guess we're just going to have to disagree.
So a brand new poll shows that the gun issue is especially important here in Western New York following last month's mass shooting. So we asked two attorneys to join us live here tonight to help make sense of what this ruling means. Paul Cambria is a Buffalo-based attorney and constitutional expert. And joining us remotely is former superintendent of the New York State Police, Donald Chesworth. He is also a partner at the law firm Tully Rinke. Nice to have both of you here. We appreciate your time. And Paul, I want to start with you. We mentioned this is only the second major decision dealing with the Second Amendment, the first one in more than a decade. We had Heller more than 10 years ago. I imagine that you saw this coming. We've talked about this based on oral arguments. This is how we thought the court was going to come down on this. But as you've looked through it, and I know you brought a printout of the ruling, what should our viewers know about this and what's going to change?
Well, we had a requirement in New York that you really had to show a special purpose in order to have a concealed carry. In other words, something different than what's in your house. You can carry one in your house, but out in public. And the Supreme Court basically said there was no history to make that distinction between your home, for example, and carrying it in public. Bear arms means bear arms, whether it be public or in your home. So they struck that down. And what they did say, however, is that this decision had nothing to do with who can have a gun or what kind of gun they can have. I think we're going to see a lot of lawsuits and so on being filed about that, and also about this so-called sensitive areas. For example, schools, courthouses, prisons, and so on. You can't have a gun. Will there be an effort by the states to expand the sensitive area so that you can't carry a concealed gun in like New York City, for example?
Yeah, this idea that you would say all of New York City is a sensitive area and whether that would work. Today, New York City, speaking of the Big Apple, the mayor there, Eric Adams, who is a former NYPD captain, said that this ruling will make everyone less safe. He said it's going to make a cop's job more dangerous. And here in Buffalo, Mayor Byron Brown agreed. Donald, I have a question for you, but let's listen to what Mayor Brown said first here today.
A feeling that there will be more guns out there and more guns that can be illegally obtained. So I think for many people, particularly families in Buffalo and families in other parts of the country who have been victimized by gun violence, I think this is going to be a very painful day for them.
Donald, I wonder your thoughts as a former state police superintendent especially. Do you agree with Mayor Brown there and also the mayor in New York City and some NYPD leaders who we heard from earlier today that this ruling and how it will be implemented going forward will make us live in a more dangerous place and make the job of law enforcement more difficult?
I disagree with all of them. I think that having legitimate people who have shown that they are responsible, being able to get weapons to protect themselves is a beneficial thing. It will probably allow them to defend themselves against those with illegal weapons much more easily.
Paul, back to you here. How is this going to play out? Because I think there are questions right now, and it was interesting to hear politicians saying earlier today, nothing changes immediately, right? This is remanded back to a lower court. How's this going to play out, and when are we going to see an actual change?
Well, I think it does change immediately because the position's going to be taken that now when you apply for a permit, if you qualify, you're old enough, you have the right background and so on, they have to give you a permit that allows you to carry in public. And of course, that wasn't what the law is. So that's what the Supreme Court said. So now the position is going to be immediately issue me a permit which I can use either in my house or in public.
Donald, there is a possibility that, as Paul kind of alluded to earlier, that politicians are going to try to re-engineer things to fit within the scope of this ruling. We've already heard that our elected leaders here in New York maybe are going to have a special session to rewrite this law. How do you think that's going to work?
Well, I think they can do certain things to change it, to change the approach. But I think that it's clear from the Supreme Court decision that New York's overly restrictive requirement that you justify somehow that you have a right to carry a weapon, it just made no sense. And now what they're saying is, if you are a person who can pass the background check, who doesn't have a history of mental illness, who doesn't have any indication that you are a danger to yourself or another party, that you do not need to show that there's some special need that you have. And I think that was the whole issue. Do you have to show a special need, or are you entitled to that because you're a citizen and a person in good standing in the state?
And Donald, to your point, I mean, this is a question about the law, but Paul, I wonder what you think about, it's not necessarily the politics surrounding this, but the public, how the public is processing all of this, and the fact that we're probably going to have this same Supreme Court, removing the right to an abortion pretty soon, which, most Americans, a majority of Americans think we should have a right to choose, right? On this issue, it's sort of the flip side. Polls show that a majority of Americans support gun restrictions like what was here. What do you think about the court moving forward and the public's perception about it? Well,
I think that there's proof now that we have 6 conservative judges on the Supreme Court. Barrett, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh have joined the others. We have 3 liberals. And if this case tells us anything, it may tell us what the outcome is going to be on the abortion question.
And with 30 seconds left, Donald, I'll give you the last word. What do you think about the court and more broadly speaking?
Well, I think the court was very reasonable in its approach to this. And I think what they're saying is that states cannot impose requirements that are unfair on citizens who have shown that they are responsible and good people who only want to protect themselves. And I think that is a logical approach, and I think it's what we deserve in New York.
We really appreciate both of you being here today. Paul Cambria is a Buffalo-based attorney and constitutional expert. You see him often here on the show. And Donald Chesworth is a first-time guest. We really appreciate your time. Former superintendent of state police and a partner at Tully Rinke. Have a great evening, gentlemen.